When they handed me the deed, they didn't even try to pretend it was worth anything. "That's all that's left," Mr. Grayson said, folding the paper once before passing it across the table like it was something that needed to be gotten rid of quickly. "My name is Clara Whitmore. I was 22 years old when I inherited what the town called a graveyard of trees. A fallen walnut grove. Not neglected. Not damaged. Fallen. The storm that hit 2 winters before had flattened most of it. Uprooted trunks. Split branches. Rot beginning to take hold in places no one bothered to clean. By the time it reached me, it wasn't land. It was a problem. You can sell it for timber, maybe," Grayson added, already turning away. "Or just leave it." I didn't respond, because I understood what he meant. Sell what little was left. Take what I could. Move on. That's what everyone expected. Because no one stays with something that's already been written off. I went to see it that afternoon. The grove sat just beyond the east ridge, where the soil ran deeper than most of the valley. That had been its value once. Rich ground. Strong trees. Reliable harvest. Now, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes when something has already ended. The first thing I saw wasn't the trees. It was the space. Gaps where trunks used to stand. Light cutting through in ways it never had before. Then the wood. Massive trunks lying at angles. Some torn from the ground entirely. Roots exposed. Others snapped clean through, their insides darkening with time. At first glance, it looked useless. Dead. Finished. I walked through it slowly, stepping over branches, around fallen trunks, touching bark where it still held, breaking small pieces loose where it didn't. Most of it was already going, softening, returning to something else. That was when I noticed it. Not the wood, not the damage. The ground, where the trees had fallen. The soil was darker, richer, protected. The fallen trunks weren't just debris. They were covering something, holding moisture, blocking wind, creating pockets where the earth underneath stayed different. I knelt beside one of them and pushed aside a layer of decaying leaves. The soil beneath was soft, damp, alive. That was the first moment something shifted. Because this wasn't dead land. It was changing land. And changing land could be used. Most people see fallen trees and think removal. Clear it. Start over. But I didn't. Because removing them would take away what they were already doing. Protecting. Holding. Feeding. The next morning, I started working. Not cutting. Not clearing. Arranging. I moved smaller branches first, dragging them into lines, stacking them in ways that followed the natural slope of the grove. At first, it looked random, messy, pointless. But it wasn't. I was shaping how water moved, where it stayed, where it slowed. The fallen trunks did most of the work. I just adjusted around them, guided them, used them. People noticed, of course. They always did. She's still out there? What's she doing with that place? Nothing worth anything. The laughter came easy, because from the outside, it looked like I was making it worse. Not better. Adding to the mess instead of cleaning it up. But I wasn't trying to make it look better. I was trying to make it work. The first year passed slowly. Not much changed on the surface. The trees didn't stand back up. The grove didn't look restored. But underneath, everything shifted. The soil deepened, held more moisture. New growth appeared. Not walnut trees. Not yet. But smaller things. Ground cover. Shoots. Life returning in ways that didn't require attention. That was the key. I wasn't rebuilding what had been there. I was building something that could survive what came next. The second year, I started planting. Not rows. Not evenly. But in clusters. Where the soil was strongest. Where the fallen trunks created shelter. Young walnut saplings. Small. Fragile. Easy to dismiss. But placed carefully. Protected by what had already fallen. People saw them. Of course they did. You're planting trees in that. Yes. They won't last. They will. They shook their heads. Walked away. Because no one invests in something they've already decided is gone. The third year, the difference became visible. Not dramatic. Not enough to impress anyone. But enough to notice. The saplings held. The ground stayed green longer. Moisture lingered even in dry weeks. The grove didn't look dead anymore. It looked unfinished. And that made people uncomfortable. Because unfinished things can still become something. The fourth year, I stopped being ignored. Not openly, but subtly. People slowed when they passed. Looked longer. Said less. Because now they weren't sure. And uncertainty changes everything. Turner was the first to speak it out loud. He stood at the edge of the grove one afternoon, looking in. You didn't clear it, he said. No. You used it. Yes. He stepped forward, examined the fallen trunks. The placement. The way the land held together instead of breaking apart. This wasn't an accident, he said. No. He nodded slowly, then looked at the saplings. They're growing faster here than they should. Yes. How? I gestured toward the fallen wood. They're not exposed. He followed my gaze. Understanding came quickly. They're protected. And fed. He let out a breath. We would have cleared all this. I know. And it would have taken twice as long. More than that. He looked back at me, then at the grove again. This changes things. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it because it worked. The 5th year was when everything shifted. Not gradually. Not subtly. But clearly. The grove no longer looked ruined. It looked intentional. Structured. Alive. The saplings had grown. Not into full trees. Not yet. But strong enough to matter. The ground held. Water stayed. The fallen trunks had begun to break down fully, feeding everything around them. What had been called dead land had become something else entirely. And that was when they came back. Not to look, not to question, but to ask. Because now, they saw it. Not what it had been, but what it was becoming. And more importantly, what it would become. 5 years. That's how long it took. For something worthless. To become something no one could ignore. And the next time they stood at the edge of that grove, they weren't laughing. They were calculating. Because now, they understood its value. And they wanted it back. They didn't come all at once. They never do. The first man arrived alone. Mr. Grayson. The same one who had handed me the deed like it was something to be forgotten. He stood at the edge of the grove longer this time. Not dismissive. Not hurried. Studying. That was new. You've done something here, he said finally. I didn't answer. Because the land spoke for itself now. He stepped inside. Careful where he placed his boots. As if he suddenly understood that what lay beneath mattered more than what he could see. This wasn't what it looked like before, he continued. No, I said. He nodded slowly, then glanced at the younger trees. They shouldn't be this strong yet. They are. Another pause. Then, I'd like to talk about buying it. There it was. Not a question. Not curiosity. An offer. I shook my head. No. He blinked. Like he hadn't expected that answer. You didn't even ask the price. I don't need to. He studied me for a moment, then let out a quiet breath. Think about it, he said. I have. He left after that. But he wasn't the last. Word spread quickly once the first offer failed. Not loudly. Not publicly. But enough. Enough that others came. Some directly. Some pretending they were just passing through. But they all stopped. All looked. All asked. And every time, the answer was the same. No. The second man came with numbers. Real ones. More than I had ever seen in one place. Enough to buy land in the valley. A house. A life that looked stable. Safe. You don't have to stay out here, he said. I want to. You could start over. I already did. He didn't understand that. Not fully. Because to him, starting over meant leaving. To me, it meant staying. The third offer came from a group. Not individuals. But the town itself. Represented by Turner and 2 others. They didn't pretend. Didn't circle the question. They stood at the edge of the grove and faced me directly. We want to buy it, Turner said. I nodded. I know. It would benefit everyone. It already does. He glanced around. At the trees. The soil. The structure that now existed where there had been nothing. You could expand this, he said. Scale it. Make it part of the valley again. I looked at him. It never stopped being part of the valley. He paused. Because he knew what I meant. We just didn't see it, he admitted. No. Silence settled between us. Then one of the others spoke. We're offering more than it's worth. I almost smiled. Now it is, I said. That's why you're here. That was the shift. The understanding that changed everything. They weren't buying what it had been. They were trying to buy what it was becoming. And that was something else entirely. Turner stepped closer. Not aggressive. Not demanding. But direct. What do you want, he asked. It wasn't about the land anymore. It was about the answer. I looked out across the grove. At the layers of work built over 5 years. At the fallen trunks that had become foundation instead of waste. At the trees growing where no one thought they could. I want it left the way it is, I said. That's not possible. It is. Not if it belongs to the town. I met his eyes. Then it doesn't. The others shifted slightly. Uncomfortable. Because now they understood. This wasn't a negotiation. Not the kind they were used to. You're turning down security, one of them said. No, I replied. I'm choosing it. That was the part they struggled with. Because security, to them, was ownership, control, predictability. But what I had built was something else. Something that didn't rely on being cleared, or reshaped, or forced into something familiar. It worked because it wasn't those things. And they couldn't see that without breaking it. Turner looked at the grove again, longer this time, then nodded slowly. You're not wrong, he said. The others turned toward him. You agree with this? One asked. I understand it, he replied. That was enough. They left without another offer. But the visits didn't stop. They just changed. People came to look, to learn, not to buy. At first, they didn't ask questions. They just observed, walked the grove, noticed the patterns, the way the land held itself together, the way nothing was wasted. Over time, questions came, quiet at first, then clearer. Why didn't you remove the fallen trees? Because they were doing more here than they would have anywhere else. How did the soil improve so fast? It didn't. It was always capable. It just needed to be protected. What about the water? I didn't bring it here. I just stopped it from leaving. That was the difference. I hadn't added something new. I had worked with what was already there. That idea spread slowly, then faster. Because it worked, others began to try it. Not the same grove, not the same conditions, but the same thinking, using what had been overlooked. Instead of removing it, instead of replacing it, the valley changed. Not completely, not all at once, but enough. Enough to matter. And the grove became something else entirely. Not just land, not just trees, but proof. Proof that value isn't always where people expect it. That loss isn't always the end. That what looks ruined might just be unfinished. One evening, near the end of that 5th year, Turner came back alone. He didn't step into the grove right away, just stood at the edge, like he had the first time. You know they'll keep trying, he said. I know. And one day, someone will offer enough to make it hard to say no. I looked at the trees, at the ground beneath them, at everything that had grown from something everyone else had abandoned. They already have, I said. He nodded slowly. Then why not take it? I turned toward him. Because they're still trying to buy the wrong thing. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? They think this is about the land. It is, isn't it? No. I stepped closer to one of the fallen trunks, now half absorbed into the soil. This is about understanding what the land is doing, what it can do, and what happens when you stop trying to force it into something else. He followed my gaze, looked at the grove differently, not as property, but as process. They can't buy that, he said quietly. No. And if they tried, they'd lose it. Silence settled between us. Then he let out a small breath. Funny thing, he said. What? We thought you were left with nothing. I glanced around, at everything that now existed. They weren't wrong, I said. I started with nothing. He shook his head slightly. No, you started with something we didn't understand. I didn't argue, because that was true, and it had always been true. They just hadn't seen it. Now they did, and that was enough. Not to sell, not to leave, but to stay. Because the grove didn't need to be owned to matter. It just needed to be understood. And that was something no one could take away.